All right, good morning, Environment Society. This is going to be the first, this is like essentially the chapter one PowerPoint. It's just the key themes of environmental science. And so I'm going to still continue to try to record the notes for you. So when we're talking about environmental science, we need to talk about some major themes. And one of the driving themes of environmental science is how human population affects the environment. So our population has doubled more than the last 40 years. It's 6.8 billion. It's probably closer to 7. And by 2050, there's supposed to be 9.4 billion people on Earth. And so, how many people can the Earth really sustain? Depends on science and value, and also about question of people and nature. So, at what value of life or what level of life do you want to live at, and what's the importance of nature? So, human population density is over 6.3 billion. It's probably a little bit higher than that. It's actually closer to 7. It has doubled over the past 40 years. And again, it's due to advancements in science, medication, those things. We do have reduced infant mortality, which is the number of infants dying at birth or at a certain age is reduced. And so when we think about a John Eli Miller family, that's an example of population explosion. So you had two parents, had 7 children, 63 grandchildren, and then 341 great grandchildren. So this kind of gives you an idea of how quickly population can grow. And so we talk about human population growth. The Miller family emphasizes a major factor in modern population explosion. Modern technology, modern medicine, supply of food, clothing, shelter, and all decrease the death rate and increase net growth rate. So increasing technology, increasing medicine, increasing supplies of necessities will decrease, so the death rate will decrease, net growth of population increases. And so this kind of gives you population in billions from 1950, and this is the expected 2150. Asia is in red, all other Asia. There is Africa, India, China, Latin America, Europe, and North America. And as you can see, we're kind of flatlined. Now, this is not taking into effect how 2020 may impact population growth. And actually, 2020, 2021, it's not necessarily the number of COVID deaths have maybe impacted population much, but like how people have changed their lifestyles. And so our rapid population growth, human population growth is an underlying issue of all environmental issues. Damages directly and indirectly due to population. So I'm going to let you pause. We'll do these questions in class, but you can kind of pause these and answer them if you want to. So famine and food crisis, food and famine, if an individual does not have food, that is going to be one of the major issues that looks at what can impact human population. Famine occurs when population exceeds its environmental resources. And so, for example, the Sahel region of Africa in the 70s, 500,000 people starved to death and millions are affected by malnutrition. So there is an emerging global food crisis due to the rise in fuel cost, higher food cost. And we'll talk more about that. But we are in the midst of a global food crisis. But again, because of other things and other factors that are occurring in the media, this is not always portrayed. And so when you think of countries that have food issues, right, they tend to have low GDP, which is gross domestic product. They may not have very stable governments. And so if you look at what happened in Somalia back in the 90s, where the US government had to go in because we were delivering thousands and tons of food, but it wasn't getting to people because of these warlords. It's almost like you know how we're having this issue right now with the vaccine being deployed properly here in the US. Imagine trying to do that with food. So, anyways, and so again, we have food crisis. There's a food crisis, and we'll talk more about that in detail. So, there are your questions. You can pause and contemplate, or you can just move along. So, sustainability and carrying capacity. What's the maximum number of people the Earth can sustain? Anybody? You can probably sit down, but much of this book will help answer that. And much of the book, the Bott and Keller book, is what you have. Currently, we are using resources unsustainably. So we are consuming resources at a faster rate than we can replace them or be replenished. So those of you that took oceanography with me, it's kind of, or oceanists, it's kind of the idea of like we are taking out more fish out of the ocean than we can replace. So sustainability, the environmental objective is is Earth's very survival really in danger? Not sure. However, the Earth will go on without us. If we all disappear, the Earth's still going to be here. I know it's hard for us to believe because we like to think as humans that we're the most important concept on Earth, but the quality of human environment is what's at risk. So So sustainability, this is an important concept. It'll be the anchoring idea for the rest of the course, is that sustainability refers to resources in their environment. And so sustainable resource harvest is that the same quantity of that resource can be harvested each year for an unlimited amount of time. A sustainable ecosystem is an ecosystem for which we are harvesting a resource that's still able to maintain its function and properties. The 2 points to understanding sustainability is that sustainability means for an unspecified long period of time. Sustainable growth is almost an oxymoron though, because ideally if something is sustainable, you're not going to see growth. It's just going to be, inputs equal outputs. So, economy. As those of you had me in class before, all environmental issues are economic. It's all about the money. So, population, humans living in harmony with nature, with natural support systems, whatever harmony may mean now. An energy policy that does not pollute, cause risk change, or present unacceptable risk. We're not there. And then a plan for renewable resources that will not deplete the resources or damage ecosystems. So in reality, we are not meeting any of these sustainable global economy ideas. It's going to be tough. When we also look at sustainable global economy, we got a plan for non-renewable resources that does not damage a region or a global environment, provides a share for future generations, so non-renewable resources like fossil fuels. We also have to have a social, legal, political system that's dedicated to sustainability. And again, we are not there. 2020 and it looks like 2021, other issues are at the forefront. And so I have some concerns that maybe environmental issues will not be at the forefront, because when you think of environmental issues, you're trying to think of a group dynamic. With COVID, I think a lot of everybody's worrying about almost themselves or their intermediate, so short term, where sustainable global economies is a long term, and I don't think we are there. Excuse me. So the carrying capacity of Earth is defined as the maximum number of individuals of a species that can be sustained without decreasing the capacity environment to sustain the same amount in the future. So again, there are lots of ideas on carrying capacity, 9 billion, 12 billion, but at this point, we'll see where it takes us. So you can pause this and respond. So the urban world, it's kind of interesting now. It'll be interesting to see next year and the year after, with the impact of COVID, how it does impact urban areas. So for example, there's been a mass influx out of large cities. So like Los Angeles losing population. New York City, I think, is also having, where before pre-COVID, people wanted to move back to the city. I think what's going to happen is, due to COVID and people wanting to maybe be out in nature more or be outside more, they don't want to be stuck in an elevator all the time. You may see a possible um, people leaving cities, but we're becoming an urban species at this point. In developed countries, at least 75% live in urban area. Developing countries, 40%. Tiffin City, it's considered an urban area. So, but in developing countries, I think you're going to start to see more and more people possibly moving into cities due to economic reasons and work. So a mega city, right, is an urban area with at least 10 million inhabitants. If you've ever been to a large city with 10 million, Beijing, Tokyo, Mumbai, New York would be the metro area there, Lagos, LA. It's very different than being in Tiffin. But by 2015, which we're way past this, the world will have 36 mega cities. I've got to update this. 23 of them are going to be in Asia. So most of your population growth is in Asia. So again, you can pause and reflect. I'm sure you're all doing that, pausing and reflecting. Precautionary principle. In 1992, there was the Rio Earth Summit on Sustainable Development, and they defined the precautionary principle, which again, 1992, that was a long time ago, So when there's a great threat of serious environmental damage, we should not wait for scientific proof before taking precautionary steps to prevent potential harm. So this idea was that, okay, we're seeing a threat, back, in the 90s, research was still kind of, a slow process, where 2020, 21, we're developing a vaccine in a few months. And so that was a precautionary principle. You can probably imagine how many places actually adhere to the precautionary principle. And so it's a reactive tool. It's proactive rather than reactive. It would be great if we could be proactive, as opposed to reactive, but unfortunately, current situations, I don't think that's the case everywhere. I mean, it was adopted by San Francisco and it was adopted by the European Union. It'd be interesting now to look at how that precautionary principle is being applied with everything that's currently happening. So, anyways, that's chapter 1 in trying to get under 10 minutes. It's about 9:47. So hopefully, like I said, feel free to watch this. This is the notes that we're going to do in class. It's completely up to you. But just laying the foundation. So this is me signing off from room 102 on Tiffin's beautiful south side. I will see you in class.